Well,
what was the first thing that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed said when he was apprehended in Islamabad? It was two things.
Take
One,
me to New York.
I want an attorney, and number two, take me to New York.
That's
and you know what? President Obama and this administration gave him his wish. And I just want to end my comments by saying, you know, you and I have tried cases. This is going to be a circus, a show trial of the maximum. You know, the motions to transfer venue, the motions to suppress the evidence. You know, none of the information we got from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed using waterboarding, which has protected American lives, which, by the way, this administration wants to investigate and put those CIA intelligence people in jail. The discovery alone, as the gentleman from Arizona stated, will keep this thing alive for years to come, will involve classified information that will not be properly protected as it would in a military court. And this whole thing is going. And then finally on the security issue, I think the gentleman from Texas is right. The security, this will become a mecca for the terrorists. Not only true al-Qaeda, but homegrown, radicalized homegrown, whether Mr. Assad is homegrown, radicalized or not. People like him will come to New York to pray, to blow buildings up, and to prey on the jury, perhaps, or the judges.
If the
and with
gentleman
that, I'll yield.
I think it's fascinating. We all stand here, all three of us, with backgrounds in prosecution. The gentleman was a federal prosecutor. I was in the Arizona Attorney General's office for many years and involved in the prosecutions of a number of cases. You sat on the bench. All three of us come here instinctively tonight because we are so repulsed by the notion that American criminal courts intended to provide a plethora of rights to Americans accused of crimes inside this country are being afforded to someone who is clearly a terrorist, who clearly plotted from outside this country, who clearly plotted acts of war, and who said, as the gentleman just pointed out, as soon as he was apprehended outside the country, I want an attorney and I want to go to New York. And this administration is going to give him both of those wishes. That's an outrage. I want to explore the point that my colleague, Mr. Gomert, made earlier. This is supposed to be a nation of laws. Our laws anticipate that crimes committed by war criminals, enemy combatants, terrorists seeking to attack this nation, and all it stands for, they weren't seeking to attack a random group of people on an airplane or in a building. They wanted to attack this nation. The law says how that should be dealt with. It's supposed to be dealt with when those terrorists, those war criminals are apprehended, as Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was. They are supposed to be tried in tribunals. You just read us the law. How does Mr. Holder, how does President Obama get around the law? And do not the people of America have the right to demand that the law be followed and that these individuals be charged and tried in tribunals held by the military because they are war criminals, they are not civilians, and they are not U.S. citizens, and they are not afforded the protection of the criminal courts of the United States? I'd be happy to.
And this was clearly evidence early in this administration, under their global justice policy, that no longer would apprehended terrorists captured on the battlefield be treated as enemies of war.
So we're going to read them. We're going to read them their Miranda rights.
What was
we're going to provide lawyers to them out on the battlefield.
Precisely, and what came out in a shocking story that has been not told enough, in my view, was that FBI agents were there at the detention facilities reading them their Miranda rights. Under this is where this administration has shifted towards treating them as criminal defendants in Afghanistan with full rights of the U.S. Constitution in Afghanistan. And I believe it is a sad day for America when we bring this mastermind of 9/11 to the very city where he killed 3,000 Americans.
Let me reclaim my time briefly. The gentleman from Arizona asked, how do they get around the law? Under Section 948H of the Military Commissions Act of 2006, it says the military commissions under this chapter may be convened by the Secretary of Defense or by any officer or official of the United States designated by the Secretary for that purpose. So the Secretary of Defense serves at the pleasure of the President. If the President, and that may word, allows them not to convene, which brings them to court.
Wait, will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
So the Secretary of Defense may choose, pressured by the President, not to convene a tribunal. How then does that give the President of the United States the right to bring them to the United States and to try them in a criminal court? Because they did not violate a civilian law of the United States. I submit they committed acts of war. Does he have the power to overrule the law and bring them here and say they are something they are not? Say they are not terrorists when their conduct constituted an act of terror? Or is he simply then obligated to hold them if they don't conduct a military tribunal?
Well, the gentleman raises a very good question. The problem has been apparently that the Attorney General and the President don't want to charge them with what they've actually done, commit an act of war against this nation. They want to charge them with a criminal violation and bring that to court. And if they do not charge them with the act of war that brought about the deaths of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans of all walks of life, if they don't want to charge them with the most heinous act of war against this country in our history, then charge them simply with a criminal violation, then they can bring them into the civilian courts. But let me
ask you a question, if the gentleman will yield.
Yes.
Does that then raise the issue of whether their refusal to charge them with the conduct they in fact engaged in, which I would argue was clearly an act of war, clearly an act of terrorism against the nation, if the officials charged with the duty of charging them with that conduct, acts of war against the United States, acts of terrorism against the United States, the Secretary of the Army, the Attorney General, or the President of the United States, are they not then derelict in their duty, and are they not then subject to being either punished by the Congress or removed from office for failing to do their duty to charge Khalid Sheikh Mohammed with the conduct he engaged in, which was an act of war against the United States?
Well, another good question, but as far as I think there is a breach of a fiduciary duty when you're more concerned about your image among foreign countries than you are with the safety of individuals in New York City. It would tend to be a breach of the fiduciary duty to protect America.
If the gentleman will yield, I'll let him make his point.
Let me inject one more comment by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, because I'm going to keep injecting his own words from his own pleading. We do not, this is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, we do not possess your military might, not your nuclear weapons, not yet. Nevertheless, we fight you with the Almighty God. So if our act of jihad and our fighting with you cause fear and terror, then many thanks to God, because it is Him that has thrown fear into your hearts, which resulted in your infidelity, paganism, and your statement that God had a son, and your Trinity beliefs. That's for Christians. He also says in God's book, He ordered us to fight you everywhere we find you, even if you were, I've already read that one, but he quotes from the Quran and says, soon shall we cast terror into the hearts of the unbeliever, for that they join companies with Allah, for which He has sent no authority. Their place will be in the fire, and the evil is the home of the wrongdoers. This is a guy we're going to bring to New York City.
And gentlemen, and you're going to bring him into New York. Osama bin Laden in the late 1990s declared war against the United States. He actually declared war against the United States.
And if the gentleman will yield,
yes.
And he took credit for this act and said it was a part of that war against the United States. How in God's name could Khalid Sheikh Mohammed not be at least charged and tried with an act of terrorism against the United States, which under current law, if we are in fact a nation of laws, must be tried in a military tribunal? This country, the American people, get it. They see that in the name of political correctness, we are placing an imprimatur on these acts that they were not acts of war, and that is not what the American people believe. We will rue the day, we will as a nation rue the day that we treat our enemies as criminals and not as enemy combatants who commit war against us.